Okay, I'm up for another challenge to squeeze in a video in just 10 minutes, and the following game was played today actually between myself and a member on a well-known chess server on the internet. I'm not doing any free commercials. So the game was a 7-minute splits game with 7 seconds on each move. So my opponent was white. He played g3, which is okay. Play another 6, bishop g2, c6, c3, d5, d4, and here theory goes, okay, I played g6, but instead of that theory gives something like bishop f5, bishop g5, knight d7, knight d2, h6, takes, f3, e6, e4, bishop h7, and so on. But I played g6 just to get that bishop out, because after e6 is kind of locked in, except for d6, and so maybe a c5 at some point. But I'll play g6, queen b3, bishop g7, knight f3, castles, knight d7, rook e1, and queen b6. I think, I mean, many players have seen this, especially if you've been playing all kinds of openings. It's kind of typical to put the queen on b6 and also, of course, for white, just to keep the queen over there, especially if they move like knight d2 or something. And the point is that if whoever takes might have some sort of advantage. For example, as we will see in just a couple of moves, I took with the pawn instead of the knight, because then my rook is open here, and the pawns are very solid, and sometimes it's very good to have double pawns because they kind of force things to open up in the center and so on. So we just let things stand like that for a while. I played e6, and here it just took. And like I said, it's very easy to take with the knight, but I don't really have anywhere to go with the knight. So I also want to play c5 at some point, and in case if his knight ever comes to e5, I can just trade whenever I want. And also, like I mentioned, I want to open up the rook file, so I took on with the pawn a6 b6, and here we played e4, which makes some sense, because now when things are kind of blocked on the queen side, it's a natural response to try something in the center. So it's e4, I play b5 to open up for my knight, perhaps, maybe sometimes play b6 and then c5 and so on. So he played e5, which is, well, I probably would have taken over here, and then I probably would take my e pawn, because I don't want to take my c pawn, and then those pawns are kind of weak, double on the b file. So that would have been a better move for white, but instead he played e5, just blocking things up. I play knight g4, my point is to come to h6 and then to f5 and then possibly to e7, which in case if he allows me to do that. So he play h3, knight h6, knight f1, and now just knight f5. Maybe he should play something like g4 just to stop that idea, and my knight looks kind of misplaced on h6. Well, of course I can always get the knight into the game, because I can just play king h8 and then put the knight over here and come to e7 anyway, but g4 would have been a little bit annoying perhaps. So I went to f5, knight g5, h6. He went back to knight f3, b6, and now we can see that I want to play c5. And here he plays g4, knight e7, knight h4, bishop b7, just developing my bishop somewhere and also connecting my rooks. Knight g3, c5, and of course my idea is not to take on d4, because again you can see that these two pawns, although I did mention that double pawns can be good sometimes, but in this particular situation it's not a very good idea to take on d4. When he takes back, you can see that those double pawns are very, well, not necessarily weak, but it can turn out to be a weakness, so it's better to just leave things as they are. My hope is, of course, for him to take on c5, and when I take back, my pawns are connected again. So you play knight e2, knight c6, putting some more pressure on d4. He went to f3, knight f3, b4, and this is interesting because I'm trying to create a weakness on the queen side, and as you will see, it was a pretty successful idea. We went bishop d2, rook f8, and well, the reason I moved my rook was that I wanted to play maybe at some point bishop f8, just having this diagonal. So here he played a3, a mistake in my opinion, because now it allows me to have something to attack. I just took back with the rook takes a3, b takes a3, and now rook e8. And now he's, as you'll see in the next couple of, well, the rest of the game more or less, he's just tied up to defending that knight. And the reason I played bishop a6 was that after knight c1, bishop c4, his knight is cut off from both this square and this square. So he played bishop f1 just to get rid of that bishop, and then I just played b5, and although he took, but when I take back my pawn, and now my pawns are connected again, at least as you can see this diagonal over here, and I don't care about the c5 pawn, because if he ever takes, I can easily win back the pawn, but you know, then this pawn on e5 will be very weak, and his knight will be completely tied up to defending that pawn. So he played knight e2, rook a4, just stopping that pawn. Of course, you can't really move that pawn anywhere, but you know, it's good to block sometimes. Bishop c1, and we can now see that. And here's the move: bishop f8. In case if he ever takes, I'll just take back, and I can also take, of course. Then I have even one more piece attacking the a3 pawn. So you play bishop e2, and now we can see that he's just making desperate moves because he can't really do anything. He's just trying to protect his pawn. And knight e2 is on its way to b1, completely passive. You can't play like that and expect to win or even get a draw. So that's basically what I'm playing against. I'm simply playing against his pawn, and I'm also making his pieces very passive. Knight e2, bishop e7, and here I expected at some point f4. Well, he still had time, just protecting this pawn one more time. I realized g5 a little bit too late. I should have played, instead of bishop e7 here, I probably should have played g5 right away. But anyway, bishop e7, king g2, g5, king f3, f6. So f6 he's forced to take, because if he doesn't take, this pawn will fall. So he played e takes f6, bishop takes f6, d takes e5, and like I said, I don't care about this pawn because that pawn is not going anywhere. Knight e5 check, king e3, knight d3, rook a2, knight takes e5. Not really necessary, but probably the easiest. And here, after knight e4, knight takes d4, c takes b4, knight b3, and there's no. And now we can see that his pieces are completely passive, and his bishop is protecting the d4 pawn, and his knight is not really doing anything. So he gave up the pawn, knight c3, just to attack this my rook, but he missed, of course, the completely obvious bishop takes d4 check. And when he moves the king, I'll just take the knight. He takes back, and then knight c1 check, forking the king and the rook. He has to move the king, king e3, and I'll just win the rook, and the game is just completely over, so he resigned. So a quick look at the opening one more time. This is actually a call, I didn't mention that in the beginning of the game. A00 irregular openings, meaning that these moves are not part of any theory, except for I played g6, but I mentioned bishop f5, bishop g5, and I believe that these moves are part of some theory at least. Okay, hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you soon.